Good to have you here. We got a lot of news to get to. Teamsters are out with their endorsement. We'll discuss their polling data. Important to hear. Whoopi Goldberg is saying some crazy stuff yet again. I think this time she could actually run the risk of getting fired because it is so inflammatory. But then again, look how everybody's being a little bit inflammatory, shall we say, these days. That's what we're seeing with Hillary Clinton saying some pretty awful stuff. Meanwhile, you got California acting just really awful. The governor of California is outlawing memes. How do you like that? So much for your First Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a lot to cover, including the Federal Reserve, because wow, I mean, 50? I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot. And you know what? The markets are getting nervous because it's like, whoa, the Fed is a little more worked up than we thought. More inflation, I suspect, on the way. Anyway, we begin today with the news of ABC News being pretty much done. The ratings just keep falling and falling and falling and falling. And why? Because they showed their hand just a little bit too much. David Muir, Lindsay Davis, like AI anchors. I was talking to Sean Spicer. I was on his show actually just yesterday, and he made the point that David's like an AI anchor, which is kind of unfortunate to say, but kind of true. I mean, like not a hair out of place, right? David really, he looks good. He looks the part. He's got somebody talking to him in his ear, and he makes sure he checks only Donald Trump, right? We're not going to check Kamala Harris. That's the deal. Well, this is causing kind of an uproar. Let me get to the ratings first because it's bad. I mean, it's like really, really bad. They're down like 12%. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, the ratings are tanking. They are down 12% from where they were going into the debate because you know what? People are like, see ya. You know, I didn't really think or know that you were that biased, and now I know, and now the curtain's been pulled back, and I don't really want to see anymore. Thank you very much. On top of that, his little co-host there, Lindsay, she was exposed for being, well, a sorority sister of Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at this.
Lindsay Davis, Robin Roberts is right. It's a sorority thing. I don't understand it all. So you have to explain it to everybody. Sure. You're a sorority sister of Kamala Harris.
Right. Well, pearls are a symbol of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, which she pledged while she was at Howard University. And the strand of pearls is symbolic of the unity and the sisterhood. OK, but on this day, there's actually a Facebook page of women who say wear pearls on January 20th, 2021. And hundreds of thousands of women are apparently wearing pearls in support of her.
Oh, how lovely. Oh, so glad that she could explain all of that to us, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Lindsay Davis being exposed is a little maybe too tight with Kamala Harris. Of course, it doesn't help that the head of ABC, it works for Disney, was the one who actually arranged for Kamala and Dougie to have a date in the first place. So, they wouldn't be married today if it weren't for somebody who works at ABC News. What do you know? Owned by Disney, of course. Let's take a look at what Bill Ackman is saying about the company. He's been all over this. I got to point this out because Ackman has been absolutely rabid. And knowing him, as I've known him for a lot of years, you know what? This is a guy he's like a dog with a bone. And he gets onto something, whether it be shorting Herbalife or going after ABC News, and he's like onto something. I mean, don't forget, this is the guy that effectively took out Claudine Gay at Harvard University because he didn't appreciate how Jewish students were being treated on campus there at Harvard, his alma mater. He was very instrumental in helping to force out the MIT woman and then UPenn, et cetera. So he's now got a new cause, and that is to see this through on ABC News. So this is not who you want to be up against. Word of the wise for David, okay? All the pretty hair in the world is not going to matter with Bill Ackman. He's pretty angry. And he was out tweeting this one. Let me show you. This is the letter that's from the whistleblower, alleged whistleblower, saying, hey, I've worked at ABC for a while. This is a letter that's dated from a day before the actual debate. And this person is pretty upset because they feel that the journalistic integrity of ABC News has been severely compromised. And so they go on and on about all of their complaints. If you look at page 2, they actually say something that's quite concerning. There's this allegation that the Harris campaign was provided with sample questions, and while they were not the exact questions, they did cover similar topics to what they eventually got to. So this, again, happened the day before the actual debate. And this person said, look, I promise, under oath here, I'm making these allegations. This is an affidavit. Well, ABC is responding to that, and they're denying all this, saying that, you know what, Kamala Harris did not know the debate questions in advance. They're denying this entirely. They say these are extraordinary allegations about this so-called collusion between the Harris camp and what allegedly happened at ABC News. Look, it's happened before, okay? Like, Dawn in Brazil, come to mind, right? CNN, come to mind. I mean, I don't think it's like that out of the ordinary, but they're saying absolutely not. And apparently David Muir is like scuffing it off, no big deal. Well, let me tell you, David, the viewers are voting with their feet and their clickers, down 12%. That's pretty bad. I mean, nobody watches ABC News to begin. Do you know anybody that watches network news, honestly? I mean, I say this as someone who actually worked in network news and used to think it was a big deal when she got her minute 20, on the evening news, and they gave you 10 seconds to talk live. And gosh, help you, if you went 11 seconds or 12 seconds, it was off with your head because everything was so precisely timed out, which is why when Spicer said, I think of David Muir as like an AI anchor, like I get it, right? Because everything is so programmed. No programming here. Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff, because this is au naturel, including, just a jumpsuit today. For those of you that are listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, thank you for that. Remember to rate us, give us 5 stars, make a nice comment. Much appreciated. And for those that are live here on YouTube, I thank you for that. We are live here. Also on Rumble, by the way, but I see all these comments in real time here on YouTube. So thank you for joining us. And yes, you see the pink tracksuit today. So, again, there's no prompter. There's no whiz bang. This is just you and me. And I think we're actually able to have a far more authentic conversation than anything I was ever able to do with the likes of CBS or ABC, which I used to go on as an economic commentator now and then for, or NBC, which I also worked for. Everything is timed out. And viewers are like walking away from that in droves. They've already been suffering. ABC was like doing the best of the three somehow. David, maybe because he ran so many roller coaster stories, was able to like actually keep some of the audience, but that had started to dwindle. If you look, by the way, at the bias of the actual coverage, and the Media Research Center did this analysis, 100% of the coverage of Kamala Harris was positive. Wow. Okay? Since she announced her candidacy for the presidency of the United States of America, while 93% of the coverage of Donald Trump was negative. But, a lot of people, maybe they didn't really know that until the whole thing was blown wide open there just a short time ago when we saw the debate in real time and we got to see that bias up front and center. They tried to do a good job hiding it. He had kind of a soft, fancy voice and spoke with such authority and seemed so calm in his demeanor. But it was all directed against Trump. And just in fairness, as a journalist, okay, you may have your personal feelings. I actually don't think he has that many feelings. I don't think he's that politically inclined. I don't think he actually thinks about things like policy, certainly not economic policy. So he just was doing the boss's bidding, right? Just doing what the boss wants. And the boss wants to take down Donald Trump. I mean, everybody wants to take down Donald Trump, for goodness sakes. Again, ABC saying, no, this isn't true, couldn't possibly happen, but we know better. I want to quickly give a shout out for our friends over at American Hartford Gold. We're going to talk about interest rates today because if you saw, the Federal Reserve came through with a 50 basis point cut. Imagine that, 50 basis points. That is much more than people had anticipating. Although I was looking at some of the betting sites like Polymarket, for example, and that had started to even out where more and more people were thinking, hey, maybe 50 is a possibility. Maybe Elizabeth Warren gave them cover because she's like, I won 75. Greedy lady. Anyway, the problem with all of this money printing is that it is inflationary in nature. And the Fed always gets it wrong. Like they're always too much, too late, or they're there with too little. And, they never can quite get this timing right. It's why Milton Friedman said, it'd be better off replacing the Federal Reserve with a computer. Well, I just want you to be covered, right? So one of the best ways to diversify for inflation, for that inflation risk, is by investing in something like gold. And I have a special deal for all of you right now with American Hartford Gold. You can get up to $15,000 actually in free silver for qualifying offers by texting my name to this number, 65532. So get out your cell phone, just text. I mean, you might as well find out about it, right? 65532. Text Trish, Trish, or you can call them. Call them at 1-844-495-1115, 844-495-1115. And of course, the website, which you will never forget, trishlovesgold.com. I mean, I can't forget that, right? trishlovesgold.com. I love a lot of things, including gold. Anyway, so take a look, guys. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. I want to get to Whoopi Goldberg because, woo, Whoopi, like really acting even more crazy than normal. Is that even possible? Apparently. So I actually think that this is something that could ultimately get her fired. I think when it's all said and done, you're going to see like a big churn because Bob Iger wants to sell ABC News. He can't get rid of the thing fast enough, especially now that Bill Ackman's hot on the trail. So he needs to sell ABC News and try and get a little teeny penny for it. I don't think that the valuation really is there because it's a dying business for all the reasons that we've talked about, for the reason that you're watching right here, right now. ABC News is not going to be able to exist in the future. And if it does, however it does, it's really going to be something that you bleed cash out of as a business, which means you don't want expensive salaries like David Muir or Whoopi Goldberg, and you certainly don't want the liability of nutty things like this being said. Let's watch Whoopi Goldberg just, back enjoying her time on a show that is, I promise you, going to go away as soon as they sell ABC News, as soon as Disney gets rid of it. Whoopi, you better start looking for a job. Here we go.
Just so deep. It's so deep. So now we're going to talk about some idiotic stuff. Okay? Because the motive behind the gunman arrested in an apparent assassination attempt against the former president is still under investigation, but it hasn't stopped the Republican candidate and his running mate from putting the blame on President Biden and Vice President Harris. Take a look.
But the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and two people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out.
The audience is appalled.
Yeah.
Literally draws were.
Okay, it's a fair statement, right? Can't we just all agree that we should tone down the rhetoric and cut some of this stuff out? But wait for it.
Dropping in our
JD, clearly you've not been to one of your boss's rallies because you believe this insanity.
By the way, she has not been to one of those rallies. I have been to rallies, and I got to tell you, the people have been extraordinary. They've been such uplifting experiences, wonderful people, super polite people. Anyway, here's Whoopi.
He has been inciting violence since 2016, telling them to beat up hecklers, threaten to shoot looters and migrants. They have, I don't remember Bill Clinton about what was going on in his White House when it was sprayed by 29 shots. I don't remember Obama blaming opponents when his White House was shot up in 2011.
Of course, this blame thing, this is all new. This started with Hillary Clinton. Don't forget, when she lost, first it was Russia's fault, but then it was Donald Trump is dangerous. Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump will ruin the country. Donald Trump this, that, and the other. I mean, by the way, he issued receipts effectively. The campaign put out 3 pages of these really dangerous comments that the likes of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have said.
You have to really take a look in a mirror to see the reflection. One of the reasons that everybody has survived is because the Secret Service has been doing their job. Let's start with that. So quit blaming folks until you decide to take a look at what's coming out of your mouth. You didn't want to tell people that it was a lie that you've been talking about when you...
Notice what she's doing right here. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. But notice her. If you're listening, I'm just going to walk you through. She's looking down at note cards. Again, what did I tell you? Scripted. So the producers put these little blue note cards together for the host at The View, and they want them all to take a certain position. And what do? They have little signs that they throw up to the audience to get them to cheer or get them to boo or get them to clap. I mean, it's so contrived. So contrived. So she's looking at her notes because she needs to refer to those to know what her talking points are that somebody else has outlined.
You're sending people to go against folks in the community.
Yeah.
In Ohio. You know it's a lie. But you talk about, well, Joy, you...
Unbelievable. That show should really be off the air. And again, I predict, mark my words, I don't steer you wrong. You know what? When that network gets bought, if that show continues, it will be in an extraordinarily different form, likely without Whoopi, likely without Joy. Because what they're going to try and do is what all these networks are. Hey, even cable's doing it, right? Cable got rid of some of their biggest stars. I mean, they don't have to pay Tucker's salary. Trust me, Jesse, he's great, but he's not that expensive, not yet. And if Jesse wanted to, he could go out on his own. I'm still sort of surprised Sean doesn't do that, right? I mean, because anybody who's got any sort of personality should be able to go out on their own. And maybe that's what Whoopi will do. But why would she stay on at The View when they're not going to pay her? And they're not going to be able to pay her because they're going to bleed that organization for any cash they can until really and truly it goes away because people don't consume their media on network television anymore. That's just the reality of it. So, I mean, that's the upside. In the meantime, you got to listen to these crazy people saying crazy things. Sonny Houston, one of the other crazies there who's saying really wacky stuff. I mean, I actually think that this is super aggressive and racist and just wrong. She actually came out and insulted Brittany Mahomes, who's married to Patrick Mahomes, and said that Brittany couldn't possibly really respect her children or her husband because they're interracial, because she wouldn't, you know what? I'm not even going to try and explain it. I'm just going to play this for you, and we're going to talk about it. And yes, the show needs to get canceled, but it's irresponsible people like this that are really doing a disservice to the country. Fortunately, their ratings are down. I mean, Fox, I think, beats them with the show with all the legs. You know, I actually used to be on that show, outnumbered. So they're beating them on cable. But here's Sonny saying some really nutty, disgusting stuff.
Answer. And that does make me hopeful, actually, that this shift effect will speak to more women about the true character of Donald Trump and will turn them away. But to your initial point, I know you said we weren't going to talk about it, but I was. It just seems to me that since she is in an interracial marriage, she should have known that to support a racist is problematic. Her children are biracial, and her family is one of the families that in the 70s could not have lived in any of Donald Trump's buildings. So it just seems to me that maybe she's just not that politically savvy, or maybe she's just not read in.
Granted,
but it's
all we know is that she liked a Trump post. We don't know. She hasn't stated that she supported him, but that's fair to interpret that she may have. But we don't know that she's a supporter.
Yeah. Woo! I mean, this is like bizarre, right? So it's incredibly insulting to Brittany, to her family, and it's also sort of suggesting that, you know what, you're dumb if you like Donald Trump. You must be some real dummy. And this is why the polling data has been so hard to try and get your hands or head around, because none of it is really and truly giving you the read that I think that you need to understand and assess this election. It's one of the reasons why I keep trying to show you different models. Nate Silver's got a great one. Some of the betting markets, poly markets, they've got great ones. I mean, there are ways of looking at this that kind of give you more insight, if you would. I mean, the fact that she hasn't won anything in Pennsylvania, I think is a big, big deal. Now we've got the Teamsters out, ladies and gentlemen. Just moments ago, the Teamsters coming out with their commentary, and this is important to see. It looks like they're not going to endorse anyone, but I want to show you what their polls say. Okay, so take a look at this right here. This is a tweet that just came out moments ago from the Teamsters, and you can see here, again, I'm just going to pull this up. in as pretty a way as I can. Here we go. Teamsters released presidential endorsement polling data. For the past year, the Teamsters Union has pledged to conduct the most inclusive, democratic, and transparent presidential endorsement process in the history of our 121-year-old organization. And today we're delivering. And then here you see the numbers. So let's take a look at these in a bigger way. Let me make these larger so you can see. This is fresh, hot off the presses. And the question to the Teamsters Union members was, who should the Teamsters endorse for president in 2024? Now, you see back when Biden was in the race, it actually was tipping towards Biden, 44% to Biden, 36% to Trump. And then Biden left the race. So then you're looking at almost 60% going to Donald Trump and only 34% going to Harris. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, look, this is not good for Harris in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in Arizona. This is America. These are working people, and I know, a lot of you guys, you don't like the unions, and I get it, because the unions have been sort of in bed, if you would, with the Democrats for years, and to a certain extent, that's still happening. And I say that because I'm looking at another tweet that just came out, and they issued a press release here today. They were supposed to announce who they were going to actually endorse for the presidency, and the Teamsters are saying, no endorsement for U.S. president. I mean, give me a break. So they're just counting themselves out. They're counting themselves out because they can't deal with the fact that everybody likes Trump. All that said, they made some interesting points on a recent CBS show. Let me play this clip for you.
Whatever the critics out there, and they're very few in the leadership, whenever I get an opportunity to highlight the American worker, especially the Teamster worker, I'm going to take any and all venue. We asked both conventions respectively at the same time, and the Republican National Convention immediately responded to us, didn't try and edit any of our messages, and I was hopeful that the Democrats would do the same, but they didn't. I'm not upset about it, but I can tell you this, my rank and file members who have been lifelong Democrats are not happy about it.
Yeah, I know there were some members of the union who spoke, but that's not the same as having the leader of the organization speak. Very quickly, did you choose to speak at the Republican convention, which is a pretty unusual move for a union leader, because you feel that Trump has been more pro-labor than past Republican nominees?
No, not at all. I spoke there because it was the ability to highlight how important we are. It was the ability to call out the people, the corporate elitists, who forget who built this country, the American workers. People like to, have their own opinions on why we were there, but I was there to talk about the American workers. It wasn't an endorsement for any and all Republicans. It was strictly a message about how important and how valuable we are, and to let the people know that fight us every day, that we're not going away.
Okay. So he's not willing to actually say who he supports, but I mean, you look at those numbers, basically 60% of the union supports Donald Trump. What does that tell you? Kamala's in trouble. Okay, Kamala's in trouble. I've been saying this all along. I keep pointing you back to Nate Silver's model, because you know what? He's actually like the best in the business. I'm sorry, like he just has a phenomenal track record. And he looks at this almost like one would as a trader, right? Like if you were actually making a bet on something, and so you take away some of the biases, and granted, everything's biased, right? Like there's just a certain amount of bias. And even if you're building a financial model, you're going to have a certain amount of bias that you bake in. So he looks at everything from the economy, some of the stats on the economy, to where she is in various states. He looks at all the polls, he weighs them differently. But what he keeps coming back with is over 60% chance of Donald Trump winning the Electoral College. Okay, so that's pretty dramatic. And if he goes up so much as 1 point in the polling, it becomes nearly a 70% chance of Donald Trump winning the Electoral College. So I'm going to tell you what I told people in 2016. Don't count Trump out. Not for a second. And Kamala is right to run scared, but this team is running a little bit too scared, if you ask me. I mean, so scared that Hillary Clinton now is saying some wild stuff. I mean, really, really, really heinous, wild stuff. I mean, honestly, this statement from Hillary Clinton made on this tech podcaster turned political, because, she was in tech, but somehow got really liberal and started doing politics. She goes on this podcast, it's friendly territory, and she says something really bizarre, which strikes me as really sexist, because she doesn't think that Kamala needs to explain any of her policies. No, and if you're pushing her to explain her policies, it's a double standard. I'm like, double standard, lady? What are you talking about? Of course she has to explain her policies. This is the entire problem with Kamala Harris. She has no policy, number one, literally copy and pasted off the Biden website right onto Kamala's website right before she took to the debate stage. She had to have something, right? They could check the source code. They knew that. Well, so this podcaster asked her, hey, should she be talking about this more? Should she be explaining her policies? And Hillary Clinton's like, oh, she doesn't have to. How dare you ask this? It's a double standard. What's it, sexist to ask her to explain her policies? I think it's sexist not to. Here we go.
She does not have to do it, Kara. I'm going to just cut to the chase. In fact, she's put out policies on her campaign website. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's truly interested can go and read about them. She referenced policies. Mm-hmm. She actually doesn't just have policies and concepts. She has, plans about what to do. I think it's it's a double standard, and it's a double standard that is partly because they are still getting to know her, but also because they're still grappling with the idea oh, am I really going to vote for a woman to be president and commander in chief?
Oh, okay. So because she's a woman, she doesn't actually have to explain her policies. Come on. I mean, this is just too much. This is so silly. Hillary Clinton needs to come up with some better arsenal. I realize they're scared. I realize they're desperate, but this is not the answer. Reminder, subscribe, share. We've grown to over 360,000, which is honestly incredible. So I thank you for all of that. And it's thanks to your support, really, that this channel has become what it has become, and it continues to grow. So I thank you for that. I want to get to what a CNN host had to say about Kamala's lack of policy. There's no policy there, none. We don't know what she's going to do. She's just warm and fuzzy and says she's going to be a new chapter and she's a new generation. And then she laughs and she says a whole lot of words in order to get across just one little point, which usually isn't much of a point. And the CNN host is shocking her colleagues because, maybe she actually wants to hear more from Kamala. Maybe she actually wants to demand that Kamala actually explain the policy. So Kamala went to the National Association of Black Journalists event, and she got up there on stage, and you're going to believe it. I'm going to play you the clip, and I'm going to play you the CNN host reaction, because this girl from CNN, she's onto something. I mean, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Here's Kamala trying to spoon feed a bunch of nothing to journalists. And frankly, she's putting them down by not offering them any substance whatsoever. Here we go.
Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country.
Here we go, right? Same old, same old, same old, same old. They're just going to tell you Trump is bad and they are good. Except when you peel back the layers and you look at what they've done with the economy, when you look at what they've done with our speech. I mean, heck, they're outlawing memes in California. We're going to get to that coming up. When you look at the state of America, you look at our border, you look at energy prices, all of this, you look at the state of the world, frankly, and you're like, okay, Kamala, you've had 3.5 years. It's not going so well. And maybe we ought to hold you a little accountable for that. Well, one CNN reporter dared to say it. Take a listen to Abby Phillips.
To the war in Gaza, but many of her answers lacked specifics.
Woohoo! They lacked specifics. Let's go back and play that one more time.
Black journalists today at the NABJ pressed Vice President Kamala Harris on policies from guns to the war in Gaza, but many of her answers lacked specifics.
Okay? You can say that again, as I had her do. They lacked specifics because Kamala's actually not that steeped in policy. She's steeped in how to attack, right? She's a classic mean girl. She's a classic bully. She got on that stage unchecked and unchallenged by the ABC moderators who are paying the price in their ratings. Thank you very much. That's good to see. But she actually got up there and just went for the jugular, kept putting him on the defense because she didn't actually want to talk policy. because she has no answers, because her policy record sucks. Okay? There, I said it. In contrast, you get Donald Trump out there who's pushing all kinds of policies. I want to get to Donald Trump out in Michigan right now, because take a look at him. He's taking the stage in Michigan and he's warning people in Michigan. He's like, listen, you may not have jobs because they may not have an economy like you even see now if this team gets in. And the reason for that is in part their ridiculous tax policy, which is kind of unthinkable and unheard of, and very sort of socialist, or even, dare I say, communist in nature. But he called them out for it, and he actually gave some specifics. Imagine.
Unrealized capital gain tax. That will drive every business out of the United States. So what that is I don't know how they can possibly administer. The only ones that are going to make money are appraisers and accountants. So they're taking a business, might have not a lot of money, but it might have great land, and they're valuing it. And what was it this year compared to next year? You got to put down a value, and then you got to go out and you have to pay tax, even though you haven't sold anything. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I don't know how any rich person or any person that's in business can even think of supporting her. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So, and they're going to raise the capital gains tax, Willie, a lot. Now, as far as regular, people are going to have to pay a lot more tax. Your taxes, she said, 70 to 80%. Some people will pay 70, 80%.
Yeah. So the way that sort of unchecked capital gains thing would work is if you have a property, for example, a farm, or if you have a stock portfolio, and they make the decision that, oh, it's gone up in value, well, we think your farm that you're operating is worth so much more, or, oh, look at your stock portfolio. I mean, you know, stocks go up and they go down, and they went up and down, and they went up and down today. We're going to get to that momentarily. But they want to charge you tax on it? I mean, for something that could go to zero, think about it. I mean, Lehman Brothers did go to zero, big fat zero, right? Remember back in the day, but maybe, you know, you're a shareholder and they're going to charge you a tax. They're going to like actually tax you on that if it goes up in any given year. And then do you get your money back if it goes down? No, of course not. This is the most stupid idea. You're going to completely discourage any kind of investment in corporations, in Wall Street. By the way, why do you think that we are the hegemonic power of the world? Why is the US the largest economy in the world? Why do we have the best standard of living? Because of our capital markets, which she wants to destroy. I mean, she really wants to destroy them. And create a ton of inflation in the process. Go around the world. This is what happens. This is how it works. Take a look at the most recent example being Venezuela, where they thought they could print money, the bolivar. Well, you know what? Toilet paper is worth more than the bolivar right now in Venezuela. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It's been tried and tried. Go back to Weimar Germany. Go back to communist Cambodia. I mean, go to the USSR. It doesn't work. And yet she's trying to push this down our throats? I mean, it's really scary. Even the Teamsters are like, I don't want it. Look at that. Nearly 60% going for Donald Trump. Thank you very much. Wow. Kamala's got some really bad policy ideas. If she has any ideas in her head whatsoever, they are bad, and they would be really bad for our country. And I think people know this deep down. I want to give a shout out, you guys, to Rob and myself over at 76 Research. Some of you, I saw you Peace of Mind. I saw Mike, I think, over there the other day on our discussion. We were actually talking about Bitcoin. We got a lot to get to still in this show, but I just want to remind you as we go into talking about the economy and what the Federal Reserve did and what, you know, Gavin Newsom is trying to do out there on the West Coast. It is really, really important to take care of yourself and take care of your family and do that first, right? Because Auntie Kamala or Uncle Joe, none of them are going to be there trying to do it for you. In fact, if anything, if you're in a sort of middle income scenario, they're going to do what they can to take, right? They reward everybody on top. They reward everybody on the bottom. And the people in the middle, I talk about the hourglass economy, they're the ones getting squeezed. So you need to take matters into your own hands. I passionately believe this, and I really believe in investing in the equity markets, the stock market, as one of the best ways to keep up with all this inflation. I mean, in addition to gold, of course. But this is one way that you can really capitalize on the ingenuity, the creativity, and the capitalism that's still here in America. And you know what? I don't bet against America long term anyway. Even if you think it's going to go down for a year or two, if Kamala, God forbid, were to get in there, I ultimately still think that we would come back with a vengeance, right? In a really, really powerful way, because the pendulum would swing. And I believe in the foundation that is the American capitalist system. So I have 3 portfolios there with Rob for you that you can take a look at. You can get them all if you join the Founders Club, or you can just get the 76 report, which is wealth of information. We have a report coming out today on this interest rate cut by the Fed. I mean, I think it's pretty darn aggressive, frankly. 50 basis points. Not enough for Elizabeth Warren. As I said earlier in the show, she wanted 75 because, hey, why not just drive inflation through the roof and just print money and have a big old party to help Kamala sail into the Oval Office? Forget about the hangover, which you would indeed have. Anyway, I want to encourage you to go there, 76research.com, 76research.com. We have, as I said, 3 different portfolios. You have a growth portfolio, you have an income builder portfolio, and you also have an inflation protection portfolio. And just lots of good ideas, 10 to 15 stocks in each and every one of those. So again, 76research.com, everyone. Do go and check that out. I want to turn right now to the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve is on a mission to cut interest rates, and they really are trying to make up for some lost time. Now, you know, I happen to be very worried about inflation, and that's sort of my shtick. I am concerned that the Fed has kind of allowed this thing to be a little bit too choppy. In other words, there was an opportunity way back when to stop with the money printing, and they didn't do it. I mean, for goodness sakes, when you've got Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer pushing through the largest spending program, which they ironically called the Inflation Reduction Act, you've ever seen, you probably shouldn't have your Fed out printing and printing and printing and printing. And so they have paid the price. We've all paid the price. You know what the grocery bills look like. You know how hard this is. And the Fed is struggling because, you know what, the economy's not doing so great, but you've got all this rising inflation. What does that mean? You're running the risk of stagflation. So they're trying to help Kamala. They're trying to even things out. They probably should have done something earlier, but they didn't. So now they're panicking. Now they have to do something, and they have to do something big. So in order to do something big, they're coming through with 50 basis points. That's a half point. So that's good. Like, interest rates should go down. But is it going to actually cause more inflation? I think that's a real question right now. Indeed, a real question. Let's go to Powell.
Our restrictive monetary policy has helped restore the balance between aggregate supply and demand, easing inflationary pressures and ensuring that inflation expectations remain well anchored. Our patient approach over the past year has paid dividends. Inflation is now much closer to our objective, and we have gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. As inflation has declined and the labor market has cooled, the upside risks to inflation have diminished and the downside risks to employment have increased. We now see the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals as roughly in balance, and we are attentive to the risks to both sides of our dual mandate. In light of the progress on inflation and the balance of risks, at today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a half percentage point to 4.75% to 5%. This recalibration of our policy stance will help maintain the strength of the economy and the labor market, and will continue to enable further progress on inflation as we begin the process of moving toward a more neutral stance. We are not on any preset course. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting. We know that reducing policy restraint too quickly could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing restraint too slowly could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering additional adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will carefully assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
Oh, of course. Okay. So they want to have their cake and eat it too. But they never can. I mean, and ultimately, you know, we can go back in history and look at all their mistakes. But even if you just take the Fed out of it for a moment and you just look at the debt levels we have, they're pretty extraordinary. You look around the world and you see how so many players around the world are trying to diversify out of U.S. interests. It puts pressure, if you would, on interest rates. So even if the Fed is doing this, the fact that we have 35 trillion and still counting in debt, it means that there is a tendency for those interest rates to go, higher, because basically you got to offer a little something more in return. Anyway, I think bottom line, you are looking at an inflationary scenario for the long term, like for the future. And this is one of the reasons why you should probably be diversifying. One of the best diversification tools you can look at is actually gold, because it's the one thing that's like held its value, right? If you look at gold versus the money supply, I've got a great chart. I'm going to have to dig that one out for you guys. What you actually see is that right about now, you've got the sort of proper valuation. So if you look at a time like right before gold really, really tanked, you got to go back some time, you saw that the money supply was nowhere near what gold prices were. And then that started to shift maybe in 2008. And I think, people were nervous, and then you had all this money supply coming on, and that all sort of came back into being. And I think that's just an interesting data point to take a look at. If you're interested in investing in gold, you know who to call. Go to trishlovesgold.com or just text Trish, my name, to 65532, 65532. You can also call American Heart for Gold at 844-495-1115, one of the great sponsors of the Trish Regan Show. So we love them for that. Remember, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. As you think about this economic policy, though, it's really kind of amazing what a bad job Kamala and Joe really did. I mean, you can't make it up. It's like that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza's like, hey, I'm going to just do the opposite of everything. That's what Biden and Kamala really needed to do. Every time they had an instinct to do something, they should have done exactly the opposite. I mean, that's certainly what Anthony Blinken should have done for years. Remember John McCain saying how dangerous he was because he was so bad at his job that every instinct he had was absolutely wrong. That's our Secretary of State. Thank you very much. And has been a long time Biden advisor. What do you know? Anyway, we've got really bad policies, and their only answer to this, oh my gosh, Project 25. It's Donald Trump and Project 2025. Project 2025 is actually pretty decent. Like the Democrats, if they were smart, would adopt Project 2025. Trump actually has nothing apparently really to do with it, other than maybe some of the ideas actually have been generated for some of the things that he said, because it seemed to kind of line up, right? Like you can get rid of the deep state. You got to give equal access to education. We need to make sure that we have more market discipline in the education field, if you would, so that little kids, if their parents so desire, have an opportunity to go to a better school, not just get stuck with the teachers union in podunk who knows where the teachers don't want to work, but they got the union ties and they just pass these kids along. I've seen it myself. In New York City, I did a story on this years ago. I couldn't believe that kids were graduating from high school and couldn't read. Literally could not read. Well, how could you how could you get beyond third grade and not be able to read? And it was explained to me that they just keep passing them through the system because no teacher wants to deal with them the following year. So they just pass them along. That's not working. We need more accountability for education in terms of energy, right? Don't we need to be able to open up all our energy markets? You can get all this information yourself. It's not hidden. That's what cracks me up. Oh, it's this hidden clandestine thing from conservatives. Heritage Foundation is behind it. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. 25truth.com. Just go there, check it out. You can see it right there, 25truth.com. I mean, I actually agree with pretty much everything that they're saying. There's nothing I actually don't agree with there. So I'm like, guys, if you're going to pick a boogeyman, you'd think you could pick something just a little bit better. Maybe, could you? Well, no, they're not that smart, you see, and that is indeed such a big part of this problem right now. You know that the Democrats are not smart when they're doing what they're doing out in California. I mean, thank goodness Elon got out of there. Everybody's getting out of there. Nobody actually wants to run their business in California because it's so onerous. I'll give you a funny story. When I left California, because I did, unfortunately, have to live there for nearly 5 years. I lived in San Francisco, which I nicknamed Sucks Francisco. Because it did kind of suck, all right? I'm sorry. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I actually developed a whole new appreciation for our surroundings and our environment. And we went hiking, went to go skiing in Tahoe on the weekends. It's great. Really beautiful place, but too liberal for me. too liberal for a simple girl from New Hampshire. So we lived there, and at the time Gavin Newsom was mayor. This is going back some time because Kimberly was actually married to Gavin Newsom, if you can imagine that. But Gavin Newsom has just bought into everything. Maybe it's because he no longer has Kimberly by his side. He's just bought into everything that the left could possibly send his way. And he's gotten more and more and more and more left, to the point where he now wants to literally shut down speech, shut down creativity. Memes are suddenly illegal. You can't use AI in any memes. I was saying to a friend this morning, I'm like, so this means like if I'm traveling in California and I retweet a meme with some AI, you know, like the cute kitty memes that might have a political edge to it, I could be arrested. So this is how crazy, okay, crazy they've gotten. Listen to Gavin Newsom, the governor of California here.
There are a lot of deepfakes out there. There's not a lot of disclosure. There's not a lot of labeling. So among the many AI bills that are on the desk are 3 specific election-related bills.
And then if you want to sign some laws?
I just thought, you know, why waste your time with a politician unless they're going to do something for you? There's 2.
2 are signed, and 3 are signed.
And this is now official. That is now injunctive relief if you do any of those deepfake election misrepresentations. So that's how easy it is to govern in California.
Well, that's kind of frightening. Elon realizes how frightening it is. Look at what he tweeted out. He said they're actually trying to make posting memes illegal. Vote them out. I mean, this is what they did in the UK, right? Now they want to do that here. I mean, am I missing something? Like this is getting scary, guys. You can't post a meme. You can't use AI. I mean, whoa. Okay, so this is not the way to deal with it. All right, I realize, you know, you don't want to see Gavin Newsom walking on a beach in a swimsuit, like a little, you know, Brazilian style swimsuit. I'm just making this up because you could do that with AI, right? Nobody wants to see that. But he, you know, now he's a member of the protected class, and you can get in trouble for doing something like that. But you know, where does this sort of stop? I mean, I think most people know, unless I guess it's a really deep fake. But you better come up with a better way of dealing with this than just saying you're going to shut it down. And we're not going to get to post the cute cat memes, like, you know, all the cats that are coming out to vote for Trump. Well, you've seen those, right? Like they are cute, right? Like this is just getting silly. And yet it's not. Hillary Clinton saying something kind of similar. I played this for you guys recently, but I want to show you again because Hillary Clinton is actually talking about criminal prosecution for people who promote misinformation, disinformation, quote, propaganda. Forget about the fact that she was promoting lots of propaganda. I'm thinking about that dirty dossier, which turned out to be completely fake. I'm thinking about listening to 51 of her friends, her ex-spook friends, who actually, you got one that's like former deputy director of the CIA, for goodness sakes. You had John Brennan in there. I mean, it was all orchestrated by our now Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. This is scary stuff. They're the ones that came out with this is all misinformation. Don't talk about the laptop. And now Hillary wants to be able to criminally prosecute people who don't subscribe to her view of the world? Are you kidding me?
There are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence because
she thinks it's going to work better if we just put criminally charged next to the possible thing that could happen if you promote information that you might actually believe in. You might actually think is, look, the truth is sometimes a little bit difficult to get at. I know this. I was a history major, okay? And part of what you do as a history major is you try and analyze from all sides because whoever is the victor typically writes the history. But what was the other side? You need to understand the other side if you're really going to have a full appreciation for history. They want to keep writing history in real time. They want to say the laptop is fake when it's actually real. They want to tell you there's no way in HELL that virus could have ever come from Wuhan, China, where they happen to have a lab that's working with this virus, right? Remember that one? I mean, Trump was in so much trouble when he dared to say that, yeah, he had seen some intelligence suggesting it could have come from the lab. I mean, you still have the CIA divided on it, but every other three-letter agency has come out and said, yep, it came from the lab. But that was misinformation at some point. People lost their social media accounts over this. Hillary wants to make sure they go to jail too. Do you see what's going on? I mean, I'm really disgusted by it, I gotta say. And I hope America wakes up to this. I really, really hope America wakes up. I mean, the Teamsters apparently have, right? 60% of them are voting for Trump. I want to go out to some of your comments and commentary right now as we're live at this hour, as we just heard from the Federal Reserve, of course, cutting rates by a whopping 50 basis points. Just incredible. Really, I get it. Don Baca is not a fan of Hillary Clinton whatsoever. He's, she does need to kind of go far, far away. It's really amazing too, just the way it's not pleasant, right? The way she speaks. Like, you people, you're all so dumb. You're just so dumb. There's no passion. There's no enthusiasm. There's no excitement in her voice. She's got a bit of that vocal fry thing going on, and she just is always talking down. It doesn't work. See, one of the reasons why Donald Trump has done so well, and why I said back in 2016 when everybody was like, no chance he can win, I'm like, don't count him out, because he relates to the average person in a way that Hillary Clinton can't ever conceive of doing. She may be smart, but she honestly doesn't like people. Unlike her husband, who likes people, some people too much, right? I mean, he really likes people. She doesn't. Donald Trump likes people. He genuinely, that's why he loves going to these rallies, and he gets like this oxygen, if you would, out of these rallies. That's why they're like trying to take him out, and he's like, no, I'm going back for some more. Speaking of which, there are new questions today. Richard Blumenthal is doubling down on his concerns right now about just exactly how we're going about, or not going about, pursuing this investigation into the Secret Service. The FBI also, I think, being held somewhat accountable for this. I want to discuss this because I'm like, how did that guy get onto the golf course? How did he know that Trump was going to be on the golf course? Everybody's like, oh, well, he golfs a lot. Okay, but somebody had to have been fairly specific, I think. Can't they protect that information more? And why is Richard Blumenthal, who happens to be a Democrat, why is he saying that they are stonewalling? I mean, that's kind of alarming, don't you think? He said that, yeah, they're stonewalling, and he said, I played this tape a couple of times for you guys. He said, you're not going to believe what we're finding out. I think the American people will be absolutely stunned to find out just exactly what they're hearing. I want to go to Donald Trump, though, because he is reacting, here we have it in real time, to the Fed cutting interest rates so aggressively. I want to share this with you. The sound just coming in. Let me see if I can play it for you and get your reaction here. Pretty stunning to see the 50 basis points, and let's see what he has to say. He might be a little bit worried about inflation. More inflation coming our way.
Thank you, everybody.
Sir, what's your reaction to the Fed cutting interest rates today?
I guess it shows the economy is very bad to cut it by that much. Assuming they're not just playing politics, the economy would be very bad, or they're playing politics, one or the other. But it was a big cut.
Mr. President, any reaction?
Big cut indeed. Now, he likes low interest rates. Little secret. He's always liked low interest rates, right? What real estate developer does not like low interest rates? You get money, you can borrow at a low rate, and you can put up a brand new building. So he tends to like low interest rates. I'll let you in on a little secret. In fact, when I interviewed him, I've interviewed him a number of times, but at the White House in 2018, we made a lot of news because he was furious with Powell. Powell wouldn't lower rates at the time. I mean, the economy was actually doing really well, right? It did well under Donald Trump's administration. You had smart people. You had him, my former co-host, Larry Kudlow, was running the National Council of Economic Advisors. Now you get, and Larry's like a real economist, okay? Yes, he's a TV host now, but he was a real economist at one point. And he is a trained economist, and he worked in the Reagan White House. I can't say enough good things about him and how smart he is. So you had smart people there. I mean, Andy Puster, right? Steve Moore was one of his advisors. These guys are really, really smart, and they get the economy, whether they're coming from a business side or whether they're coming from the academic economist side. And yet Biden has a guy who doesn't even understand how monetary policy works. I mean, he's got a guy who did an undergrad in music. No offense against that. I studied music originally. Okay. But I'm not running the National Economic Council at the White House. He got an undergrad in music at Manhattan School of Music. And then he went on to Columbia and studied social work. So you tell me where the economist degree is. He doesn't have one, okay? So that's who's now running our economy alongside Biden and Harris. And you wonder why it's such a mess. So Donald Trump loves low interest rates. So he probably in some ways likes this, especially if he gets into office. He wants to see sort of the wheels turning. The danger, of course, in that is that if you don't marry that with good, strong policy, then you're going to have a slow-growing economy that's very inflationary. That's why I like his policy. I like the idea of rewarding work, for example, saying no taxes, no federal taxes on overtimes. I bet you the Teamsters like that too. Anyway, let's go to some more sound of Donald Trump. This also just coming in because Trump is reacting here to the Teamsters not officially endorsing him, right? They're not going to endorse him. You heard all that. Incidentally, I should point out, he's at a Bitcoin bar. How about that? He's at a Bitcoin bar. I have followed Bitcoin forever. Rob and I just did a huge special on that yesterday at 76 Research. We have quite a substantial report on it as well. So remember to go to 76 Research, you guys, and at least sign up for the if you can, the $1 a month, right? You can always cancel it if you hate it. So no harm, no foul. But if you get the $1 a month for the first 2 months, it goes to $9.95 thereafter. You will read a lot about what we think about Bitcoin. I'm just putting this lower third up there. That's what we call it, a lower third. It's a graphic that shows you 76research.com. You can sign up with code word dollar, DOLLAR. We did a lot on Bitcoin. Let's go to Trump. Again, this sound just coming in moments ago. Donald Trump at a Bitcoin bar, which, look, it is the future of money. Ethereum, Bitcoin, I think cryptos really, really are going to be a big part of our future in money for reasons that we did explain on the 76 channel and in our report. But let's go to Trump.
Mr. President, any reaction to the Teamsters' decision not to endorse?
No, they were. It's a great honor. They're not going to endorse the Democrats. That's a big thing. And this is the first time in, I guess, 50, 60 years that that's happened. Democrats automatically have the Teamsters. They took a vote, and I guess I was at 60% or more, and that's a great honor. I mean, it's really, I've had a lot of Teamsters work for me, a lot of the concrete trucks, and built all these buildings that you see in New York City, the Teamsters. Exclusively Teamsters, I have to say, they've done a great job. But the vote of the Teamsters themselves was very high for me, and the leadership, Sean O'Brien and the group, who are great people, they said we can't endorse the Democrats. So I think this is the first time in many decades that they haven't endorsed Democrats.
Wow. So it is a big deal, right? Because they typically always go with the Democrat. But Trump invited him to speak at the RNC. A lot of people were like, oh, because they didn't necessarily like what John O'Brien was saying, the head of the Teamsters Union at the RNC. But it was a savvy move, I think, politically, because what it was doing effectively was Trump signaling to all the workers, all the Teamsters out there that, hey, I got your back. Like, even if you've traditionally been a Democrat, remember, like, I'm willing to listen to you. I'm willing to hear you out. I put your guy on stage in prime time, right? National platform at the RNC, which normally wouldn't happen. The Republican Party and the Teamsters haven't historically gotten along. I remember talking to Trump when he was in office about the Teamsters and a union deal. And he was very committed. He's like, I remember we were hanging up the phone and he said to me, I gotta go talk to the Teamsters. I gotta get this. And he really did seem to care about finding a way to bring them on board. And I realized that not everything, they say as a union is something that we all agree with. And I think we're really, believers, if you're watching the show anyway, in a meritocracy system. But don't forget, they've gotten the shaft in this whole thing too. right? The workers are the ones. And so I think the workers are saying we need somebody other than Kamala. And so when you look at this data, it's really just amazing. This is quite a poll to see, all right? So here you go. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. You see the Teamsters actually saying that like nearly 60%. Check that out. 59.6% would vote for Trump today over Harris. That's who they want their union to endorse. So it is a big deal, and I appreciate that he's looking at the positive spin on this thing. That's really, it's, you know, it's part of just the way he's wired. Harris, 31%, Trump, 58% in another poll where they're also looking in a phone poll of undecided being 6%, don't know 5%. The electronic member poll, pretty striking, 59.6% going to Donald Trump. Interesting, because, you know, they felt differently before. They actually liked Biden quite a bit. You look at the old polls, and you have Biden at 44 and Trump at 36, RFK at 5.6. That's very, very interesting to see. They really don't like Kamala, and I get it. Like, you know, Kamala is not really going to represent their interests. I mean, she's more interested, it seems anyway, in so much of this ethereal kind of warm and fuzzy stuff. There was a guest on MSNBC today basically saying she's so terrific and we should all love her because, you know, she's the product of a mixed marriage. Well, I think people are kind of over that. They're like, yeah, okay, so what? Like, that's not a reason to vote for her. I need to know that she's going to be able to help solve my family's problems. Let's go to this MSNBC contributor now.
But Kamala Harris would be just the opposite. Why? Because she's an inspiration. Not only is she positive and does she bring hope and optimism, but as a black woman, the product of a mixed marriage, she will inspire millions of people throughout the world. Our credibility as a nation, you know, that we would be able to allow, our country is so great that we're allowed a woman like that to become the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. That is going to send a powerful message all over the world. People like Vladimir Putin are going to say, hey, wait a minute. These guys, you know, they truly have a democratic country. They truly are representative. They truly are fighting for all their people. And Kamala Harris is a manifestation of that.
Really? Okay. So, you know, it's just because we have a woman who's of a mixed marriage and she's a woman and therefore, like, no, okay? Like, that's not going to put food on the table, all right? That's not going to keep us safe. Vladimir Putin is not going to think, oh, wow, they elected a woman, like they mean business. No, it's irrelevant, okay? It's irrelevant to everyday families. Maybe it makes you feel nice on the margin, but if, you know, and we could afford that if the economy were in a great spot. I say this, like, how did Biden get in there in 2020 with no real policy, with no agenda, going live from his basement with a full-on teleprompter all the time? The reason he was successful, ladies and gentlemen, is because the economy was soaring. I mean, we were up 30 some odd percent, actually having been down 30 some odd percent when they closed everything down, and everybody was living high off the hog. They had the stimmy money. Everything was great, right? Things were good. People were going back to work. The economy was reopening. Everybody felt like the economy was terrific. So when the economy is terrific, you have the luxury of saying, well, I want to vote for the guy that's not sending mean tweets. When the economy's not doing so great, you suddenly don't care about that stuff like, you know, who her parents were, that they were foreign, or that she's a woman. Suddenly that doesn't really matter because, you know what? You got to just handle the blocking and tackling. You got to make sure that you're safe, that your family's safe, that you have enough money coming in the door to take care of yourself and your family, and that's it. All right. So all the warm and fuzzy stuff goes right out the window. And this is why Trump is well positioned right now. And this is what scares them. This is what scares the living daylights out of this team. I'm telling you, they're getting really worried, which is why you hear people like Hillary Clinton saying these really nutty things over and over and over again. Right? I mean, hey, make sure you guys subscribe. I agree with you, the Talk Show American, saying, you know what? On Twitter, Putin could give two you-know-whats about her. He doesn't care. He really doesn't. You know, the mean tweets, Don, like, I think people are like, hey, I'll take them all day if I can not have to deal with this crazy inflation. He just put out a new commercial actually yesterday. It was fantastic. It talked about the life of a American, like the everyday life. You get up and you pour your coffee. It's up 67% from when Trump was in office. Then you get into your car and you drive to work, but guess what? Your electricity bill, or forgive me, your gas bill is up 20 some odd percent. I mean, electricity is also up 20 some odd percent. Your car insurance is up 54%. These are not good numbers for Kamala Harris. So I think that ultimately, when push comes to shove, the question becomes, though, will people tell the pollsters? I don't think so. When push comes to shove, they're going to do exactly what they need to do. All that said, you know what? We're not going to get too giddy and too excited and too ahead of ourselves. Peace of mind writing here on the broadcast. Who needs safety, security, and affordability if we have joy, right? Like, just feel good, communists that we are. Listen, you need all those things. And I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I think that they need to focus. We need to make sure that there's not any kind of wacky stuff happening. I mean, Texas had to just take 1 million voters off the rolls. You had people that were dead. You had people that weren't citizens. You had all kinds of things there in Texas, and they had to clean that up. We need to make sure that we have very clean elections. It is critical. And this is not crazy talk. I mean, you really need to make sure. And the other thing I would point out is, and I know everybody doesn't agree with this because we all feel like you should vote in person. And I do. I vote in person because I like that. I like knowing. I take my kids and we make it a big thing. My parents used to take me. It's like, this is your right as an American citizen and you've got to exercise that right to vote. So I like going in person, but not everybody can do that. Okay. Well, the Democrats have mastered that. They've totally canvassed every neighborhood they could and can, and they get and collect all those absentee ballots. So Republicans need to play that game too. Lara Trump, I credit her. She gets that. She recognizes that, and they're doing their best, but they need to make sure of it. Billy Lynn, great to have you here. Cat Crazy, I like that name. Great to have you here. Really, really just a great turnout from all of you right now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's just so important. And hit the bell. Hit the bell because we're working on it. I have yet to pick an exact time when I'm here. I mean, it's usually in the afternoon, but you need to hit the bell so you know when I'm here. And I love having this conversation. We have so many regulars here. Ian, welcome back. It is good to see you. Oh my gosh, Ian, I got to put this up on the screen. Ian's making the point that he's still on the roll in Gainesville, Florida, and he's been living in another state since 2019. Exactly. See, this is the scary stuff. This is the scary stuff I'm talking about. So we have to clean that stuff up right now, today. Again, remember to subscribe. Remember to go over to 76 Research. Use code word $, so you get it for just $1 a month for the first 2 months. Terrific insights and research. And I will see you right back here tomorrow afternoon. Thanks.